Ever wondered what the secret is to cooking the perfect steak? It all starts with selecting the right cut. Now when we talk about steak cuts, we're referring to the part of the cow the meat comes from. You've probably heard of ribeye, filet mignon, and New York strip. But do you know what makes them different? Each cut has its own unique flavor and texture. Ribeye, for instance, is known for its rich, beefy flavor, courtesy of the beautiful marbling that runs through it. This marbling melts as the steak cooks, infusing the meat with a mouth-watering, buttery richness that's hard to beat. Then there's filet mignon, the darling of the steak world. It's the most tender cut of beef, with a delicate, almost buttery texture that's a joy to eat. However, it's not as flavorful as the ribeye, so it's often served with a sauce or topping to amp up the taste. And let's not forget the New York strip. This steak is a great middle ground between the ribeye and the filet mignon. It's got a good amount of marbling for flavor, but it's also pretty tender. Plus, it has a nice, beefy flavor that steak lovers crave. Once you've chosen your cut, it's time to consider thickness. A steak should be at least 1 inch thick. Why? Well, thicker steaks are easier to cook to perfection. They give you more room for error when it comes to achieving that ideal internal temperature. Anything less than 1 inch, and you run the risk of overcooking your steak before you've even got a good sear on the outside. Now let's talk seasoning. Don't be shy with the salt and pepper. Season generously because some of that seasoning is going to stick to the pan or grill. And once you've seasoned your steak, let it rest at room temperature for about 30 minutes before cooking. This allows the seasoning to penetrate the meat, and it also helps the steak cook more evenly. Remember, a great steak starts with a great cut, so choose wisely, season generously, and let it rest. Now that you've chosen your steak, it's time to heat things up, literally. Welcome to the world of grilling techniques. First things first, let's talk about preheating. If you've ever wondered how to achieve those beautiful, Instagram-worthy grill marks on your steak, the answer is simple: a hot grill. Preheating your grill to high heat is the first step towards those coveted grill marks. This high heat sears the surface of the steak, resulting in a delicious caramelized crust. But the benefits of preheating go beyond aesthetics. Preheating also helps cook your steak evenly, ensuring that the heat penetrates into the meat uniformly. So, before you even think about placing that steak on the grill, make sure it's good and hot. Now let's move on to the sear. Searing is the process of cooking the steak at high heat for a few minutes on each side. This does two things. First, it locks in the juices, keeping your steak moist and flavorful. Second, it creates that mouth-watering crust we talked about earlier. It's a win-win situation. Remember, searing is not about cooking the steak through, it's about creating a flavor-packed surface. So don't be worried if the inside of your steak is still raw after searing. We'll take care of that in the next step. Finally, we come to indirect heat. After you've seared your steak, you'll want to finish cooking it over indirect heat. This simply means moving the steak to a cooler part of the grill. The beauty of indirect heat is that it allows the inside of the steak to cook to your desired level of doneness without overcooking the exterior. Whether you prefer your steak rare, medium rare, or well done, indirect heat is your ticket there. Master these grilling techniques and you're well on your way to steak perfection. A steak without a sauce is like a ship without a sail. It's time to whip up some magic. We all know a steak is delicious on its own, but a great steak sauce can elevate it to new heights. So, let's start with a simple yet flavorful homemade steak sauce. Begin with a base of caramelized onions, garlic, and a splash of your favorite whiskey. Simmer it down, then add a dollop of ketchup, a spoonful of brown sugar, a squeeze of lemon, and a dash of Worcestershire sauce. Stir it all together, let it bubble away, and you've got a sauce that's a perfect blend of sweet, tangy, and savory. Now that we've got our sauce sorted, let's talk about some classic steak pairings. Garlic mashed potatoes are a tried and true companion for steak. They're creamy, comforting, and a fantastic way to mop up that delicious sauce. But let's not forget about the veggies. Grilled asparagus, with its slight char and smoky flavor, provides a wonderful contrast to the richness of the steak and sauce. Add a squeeze of lemon for a touch of acidity, and you've got a side dish that can hold its own. Remember, a great steak meal isn't just about the steak itself. It's about the harmony of flavors, textures, and colors on the plate. With these sauces and sides, your steak is sure to be a hit. We're almost there, folks. But before we dig in, there's one final step: resting and serving. Now you might be thinking, resting? But I'm the one who's been doing all the work. Well, don't worry. We're talking about the steak here. Allowing your beautifully grilled steak to rest for a few minutes before slicing is key. You see, when you grill your steak, the heat pushes all those tasty juices towards the center. If you were to slice into it right away, those juices would end up on your plate instead of in your steak, and we certainly don't want that. So, let your steak take a breather. 5 minutes should do the trick for most steaks. But if you've got a particularly thick cut, you might want to give it a couple more minutes. As your steak is resting, you can turn your attention to presentation. Slicing your steak is not just about getting it into bite-sized pieces. It's an art. The angle of your knife, the thickness of the slices, it all matters. Thin diagonal slices not only look more appealing, but they also make your steak seem tenderer. And there you have it, folks. With a little patience and some attention to detail, you can elevate your steak from simply delicious to truly impressive. Follow these steps and you'll be cooking the perfect steak in no time.